Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Benu Currency Podcast, where we explore how we can better navigate change, rethink the future or futures, and build more resilient, inclusive communities. Today, I'm joined by someone who has been at the forefront of reimagining finance, leadership, and education through the lens of futures literacy, Martin Calnan. Hello, Martin. How are you?
Hello, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here. Martin is the chair of the first ever UNESCO chair in futures literacy focused on finance. And with a background in marketing, strategy, consulting, and executive education, Martin brings a deeply human and systems oriented perspective to how we define value and how we prepare for the future. So, frankly speaking, I have no idea what we want to talk about, but we are trying to talk about something really meaningful related to the futures literacy and trying to talk about something beyond buzzwords and how we thinking our assumptions can unlock new opportunities for business, community, and leadership. Martin, maybe you want to add something.
Well, that's a pretty vast, theme that you've launched there. Um, but I like what you say, and I'd like to pick up on the notion of beyond the buzzwords. That I think it is definitely worth maybe exploring a little bit because it's also very much linked to what futures literacy to me is all about. And because we live in a world where it's all about the buzzwords, uh, and it's all about using the right words uh, without really thinking what or questioning, even not even thinking about what they really mean. What do they mean in what context? Um, and so the same way, just to pick one, and actually there are two that you've already used that I think are worth exploring. And maybe the first one is opportunity. What do we mean when we say opportunity? What opportunity for who? Opportunity to do what? What is an opportunity? And obviously, opportunity as a white male privileged individual is very different from your opportunity when you made the huge decision to leave your country and travel to the unknown. Really, I mean, yes, okay, and we don't using that one word to encompass all of that is so reductive. It is so reductive, especially because then you immediately it's not just reductive, it's also dangerous because then an opportunity immediately becomes, I think, that could be my assumption, but immediately becomes linked to economic opportunity, uh, which then frames the whole debate about climate change, about innovation, about technology, about leadership. And it's all about, oh, well, actually, I need to capture an opportunity and make it into an economic, something that has economic value. And I mean, I don't know, we haven't had this conversation yet, and maybe this is part of the conversation we can have today, Ben. But yes, of course, economic opportunity is super important. But I think it is only one aspect of opportunity that clearly, if we just use your example, um, you have come to explore, you have come to play with, you've come to maybe challenge even.
You started from a very nice, important point. Recently, I had a discussion with one of my friends about the different indicators. And some people, for example, just focusing on some specific indicators, mostly maybe economical stuff, and just overlooked other part of the human being life, let alone talking about other, part of the world, considering futures and the way I learned in futures literacy showed me that it's not just about creating opportunities. It's not just about even focusing on human centric opportunities or something like that. It's more complicated. You need to consider different stakeholders in a way. And when I'm talking about stakeholders, it means maybe even just different kind of stakeholders, including animals, trees, the world, nature, whatever. When we are talking about futures literacy, I just want to back to the main concept, even the point we met each other. I mean, around futures literacy. I want to ask you, and connecting this concept to that point you mentioned, what does futures literacy means to you personally? Beyond the academic definition, of course, and beyond those, beyond those buzzwords.
Mm. Well, futures literacy to me is really this, and that's what I find the great strength of it is precisely. I like to use the image of Plato's cave image. You know, futures literacy is kind of the call to actually look up, raise your head, and see. Wait a minute, what are those shadows, and where? And then maybe turn your head and say, oh, where are they coming from? And then actually, potentially try and find a way out of the cave. That it is that capability that I think is encompassed in futures literacy. It is the capability to ask the questions, not just to understand, not the mechanistic questions of saying, how does something work? Which is what the scientific method has done, and it's wonderful. And it is, I'm very glad we have electricity and the internet and all of that. That's not the issue. But futures literacy is the need that I think we all have very deep down inside to say, hey, wait a second, what is this world that I'm living in, and what defines it beyond, once again, just understanding how the processes work. But you see, that's two very different levels of questions. One is very mechanistic, saying, okay, how does this work, and how can I make it work better? And the other one is, how does it all fit together? And to me, that's really what futures literacy is. Those are really the deeper questions that allow you to ask, not just, economic value, this is what's important. How do I make that more? How do I make more value? It's asking the question, what am I making it for? Why am I making it? What are the costs with the value that I create for myself, for the wider stakeholders? And even the word stakeholders, that's another loaded word, not only is it a buzzword, it's a loaded buzzword. So, stakeholders, we are assuming that, the universe and the world functions through a proprietary system.
So how we can talk about, for example, other stakeholders without talking about other stakeholders?
But maybe it's not the word stakeholders is not so much the right word. Maybe it's simply all the other things that we are in relationship with.
Meaning we are part of these worlds.
We are.
And there's no difference between me and that's specific, for example.
And the nature of the relationship isn't one of ownership or propriety or property. The nature stakeholder implies I have a stake in what you do. And so maybe I should benefit from it. It's a very mechanistic causal thing that we can control. I think it's much more complicated than that. Of course, it's nice to have a simplified version of it so that we can kind of make sense of it. But let's not forget that we're simplifying, and that when we're simplifying, we're making shortcuts.
So in that way, if you want to rethink, in terms of the point you mentioned in the beginning, opportunities, I prefer to now focusing on the value. If you want to rethink value, what new opportunities open up for? It's still
hard to get out of the language, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. This is the point. But as I know, you focus a lot on value in the context of finance, in your experience? Are our traditional assumptions about value limiting us, and how we can think in a different way about value?
Uh, I think that, we live in a world where clearly, even though not everybody quite agrees, but we're definitely facing a lot of some pretty serious crises.
That's right.
Climate, whether it's inequality, whether it's, um, political stability, war. Uh, we've got some pretty major problems that are staring us in the face. Our standard model is, and in fact, that's another use of the word opportunity, is that we need to find a way of fixing this. We need to fix the problems we've created.
But how we can know our solution could be the best solution?
That not only can we not know that, but we have this hubris of saying we can actually fix it. All the models out there, and that's where opportunity is often says. I'm sure you've heard it as much as I have. I hear it 12 times a day. We have all the solutions. We just need to apply them. And what people don't understand is that this is actually an amazing economic opportunity. And if we actually applied these, we would actually generate X billion, trillion dollars worth of activity. So everything is framed in the world we live in, everything is framed in economic terms. Even our technical solutions are framed in economic terms, which means that finance is at the heart of that. The decisions we make today are based on a projection of the value, the economic value they will create. And if we don't ask that question, if we don't say, well, is economic value enough? And not only is it enough, how do we define that economic value? Economic value for whom? What costs are we not integrating into those calculations? Who are we sacrificing? You've done enough futures literacy to know that one of the big questions in futures literacy is, whose story are we not telling? Who are we forgetting? Who are we leaving aside? Because they're just not part of our assumptions. And all of that is at the core of our definition of value. And because our definition of value is at the core of the investment decisions we make, it seems pretty clear to me that this is a central question to ask, not so much to answer, but to ask. And the financial sector has to be a part of us.
What I understand is you are not exactly, at least in the beginning, looking for, solving the problems. You are focusing on thinking more about problems and trying to find or ask I don't want to say right questions, but asking some really, fundamental questions about our assumptions, about the way we are thinking, looking, or coping with the world, with others. And when I'm talking about others, I'm not just talking about other, for example, countries, other, uh, uh, people, even maybe others in general, everything. And not, as you mentioned, kind of, uh, thinking in terms of stakeholders, but yeah, all of us are part of this world, and there is no ups and downs in terms of, am I right?
Yeah. It's a pretty bold statement, because we live in a world where we own the world. We really feel, as that's one of the assumptions we have, that we own this world, and the world is here for us to exploit, or even if it's not exploit, the other version. But to me, it's the same thing, to protect.
But yet, I feel the way you are thinking or looking to the world or this concept is kind of disruptive approach. Meaning, in a, I don't know, in a positive or negative way, you are thinking now outside of the box. It's not usual for most of people, because as you mentioned, yeah, at least it seems for me that you are, yeah, exactly trying to frame outside of this frame your mindset. So, in that term, what are the biggest mindset shifts? Let's say leaders. What are the biggest mindset shifts leaders need to embrace to become more future ready, but following your mindset?
Um, I mean, I think leaders. First of all, the a real question is, what does it mean to be a leader today? But uh,
Sorry, just to make it clear, when I'm talking about leader, I'm talking about those people who have more cover or resource.
okay. Um, well, first of all, it would be really the first mindset shift. Sorry, that I think is required by that is for people to acknowledge the people who have power to acknowledge that they have that power. And I don't mean about the 1% or the 0.1%. Unfortunately, they know it and they acknowledge it and they throw it in your face. That's not who I'm talking about, even though they have a lot of power and they have a huge concentration of wealth. Um, to me, that is a different something else, and it's a different question. I think on a broader scale, what I would love to see is how each one of us recognizes the power that we have within the context that we're in.
Now you are talking about agency?
Close, close. But I think we can stick with the word power because then agency is all. There's a whole lot of other question that gets aroused. We all have power, and it's not the same amount of power. As a white man, once again, as a white man, educated in the West, with a certain professional status, I have a certain amount of power that not everyone else shares.
Exactly.
And with that power comes a responsibility. And I think it's very important to bring this to a very personal level. Because otherwise, when we talk about leadership, very often everybody says, okay, who can I find around me? Who's the leader in the room? And what does he, because it's often a he, what should he do? What should he change? Now, once again, this does not, to be clear, I don't want to say that some people have more power and they have more responsibility. That's not the point. And this discussion should be had. But I think it's the first thing, and I'm glad you brought the notion of power to the table. The first thing is to also recognize all of our power. You as an Iranian male immigrant, you have more power, less than me probably from a social perspective, but you have more power than a whole lot of other members of your present and past tribe.
That's right.
To me, that's the interesting question, and that's where we need that's what we need to explore.
Meaning, instead of looking at others, looking into the mirror. Yes. So, how can we, I mean, as individuals, considering all those things you already mentioned, not just, I mean, large institutions or businesses or communities, can start integrating futures literacy into our everyday thinking and, I mean, activities?
Um, it's both super easy and super difficult at the same time. It's just one of those things that's really, really both are true. Because the answer I'm going to give you is going to sound so simple, and yet it's not. But I really think it starts with one simple question that we need to constantly ask ourselves in every situation, every moment of our lives. And again, not in the big moments, big decisions. Really, it's a constant thing. It's basically, whose voice, and when I say who, it can be things as well, and not just people. Whose voice am I not hearing? To me, ultimately, that's what it's all about, and that's what futures literacy is all about. Because our anticipatory systems, if you want to talk a little bit of technical, our anticipatory systems are all about the story we know. We are reproducing what we know in one way or another. We're just picking up on the signals that we know already. So ultimately, it's really all about, and it sounds simple again, but it isn't. It's really all about, okay, what in the story that I'm telling myself. So in all the decisions that I'm making, in all the futures that I'm imagining, what voices are not being heard? What story is not being told?
And how we can learn or practice to, I mean, hear those voices when we have no idea about them.
Yeah. Uh, well, and I think Riel speaks of this beautifully. I think it's about being in community, which is also why what I love what you're doing. You know, by the way, because it
Yes.
is. This is not something you can do alone. You can't sit in your room and say, "Oh, okay," all alone at your desk and say, oh, "Okay, that's just it doesn't work," because our brain is too small, literally, and too focused. Maybe there are some exceptions and some people who are, have greater capabilities, but I think most of us aren't capable of that.
And when you are talking about communities, for me, because the way I'm thinking about communities is it's kind of opportunity, kind of opportunity for kind of exposures. I mean, talking, interacting with people who are different from you and exchanging your ideas, sharing your experience, learning from others, even sometimes discussing on what you are not thinking in the same way. What I want to talk about, sometimes people, or maybe most of the time people think in terms of building or being part of a community, you have to find some like-minded people who are thinking exactly like you. But for me, it says no. You just need to focus on some core values, but it doesn't mean you have to think in the same way.
Mm.
You just need to learn how to cope with each other in a right way, sharing, caring, and the things like that. What do you think?
Uh, Completely agree with you. Uh, to me, a community is not a network. It's not about finding okay, a business opportunity. There's nothing wrong with the word opportunity, by the way. We just have to understand what some of the assumptions underneath it are. But in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with the word opportunity. So, to me, a community is not about a business opportunity. It's not a network. It's about being together, literally. To to share time together. And I think one of the things that we're very much stuck on is what is the purpose of the community? And maybe a community doesn't have purpose or doesn't need to have purpose apart from just being together. And in that being together, well, that's where, well, things happen. Ideas emerge.
Serendipity.
Serendipity. That weird comment that somebody says and says, wow, I never thought of that.
That's right.
Those sparks, not in the design thinking innovation kind of thing. The sparks and suddenly you have a brilliant idea. It's more about growing. It's more about coming to connecting. Earlier we used the word maybe instead of stakeholders, it's being in relation with. Well, that's what community is. Community is about being in relation with, and that's why you can also be in relation with other things, other beings. Um,
Even not yet beings.
Even not yet beings. And maybe that's in today's world, maybe that's even more important.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. So, you know that, and you mentioned, I'm more focusing on community-driven initiatives, focusing on at the same time professionals and also more on a small, medium-sized enterprises. Because of some reasons, I think it's really important to maybe focus more in the specific, I mean, target for myself. And as I see, because most of the people nowadays, they are, I mean, struggling with some daily challenges. For example, the small, medium-sized enterprises, they need to survive. They need just to, do something. Just they have some, I mean, lack of resources, for example, and it resulted in not thinking or imagining about futures or future or whatever. If you could give one piece of advice to this kind of people, I mean, young professionals and entrepreneurs, about preparing for an unpredictable future, what would it be?
That's a difficult one. Um, because that's the whole tension of life. The day to day. and making things work and paying the rent and looking after the kids or whatever, walking the dog, whatever it is, paying tax.
These are the things every day I'm talking to them and they are sharing.
Exactly. And at the same time, being able to take a step back. I don't have a miracle, cure for this. I think maybe the first thing is to recognize that we're all struggling with this. We all struggle with this contradiction, this tension between trying to make things, trying to pay the rent and dealing with that and thinking in a broader way. And at the same time, once again, it's important to know that you're not alone. None of us, literally, we're really literally not alone. So, whether it's Bennu community, but everywhere, really, even, anybody you talk to is facing this issue. And sometimes, and it's okay. And in fact, it's really helpful to say, you know what? There's nothing I can do. And let's just sit with that. I'll be worrying about my life again in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in half an hour. That's not going to go away. But actually accepting this vulnerability that we all have, which is to say, you know what, no matter how hard I try, there are some things I can't control, and I don't know what those things are.
Why it's important?
I think initially it's scary. Initially it's very scary. And at the same time, after a while, you realize, like so many of us have had, unfortunately, I think most of us have also had some pretty bad experiences in our lives. And for many of us, unfortunately, not all, it's true, but for many of us, we do actually pick up the pieces. And it's a moment to sit with that and to say, well, this is just the way it is. And it does give you a little bit, I think it does give you a little bit of peace of mind to say, okay, but just sit with that for a minute. Let's be with that for a minute. It's scary, yes. Recognize the fear, accept it, say, okay, I'm afraid now. Doesn't feel nice, but it's there. Ignoring it isn't going to make it go away.
I like this because this is one of the piece of advice that Stoic philosophers all the time talking about. If you can control something, okay, this is another story. If you cannot, just forget them in a way.
It's easier said than done. You agreed. And maybe once again, that's where community comes in, to realize they're not alone, to be able to reach out and to say, this is really freaking me out. But I think maybe a more concrete example is sometimes looking for a solution only makes things worse. Sometimes you do need to just, okay, let's see what emerges once again, If I just sit with it, maybe something that I've totally unexpected emerges.
It's really important.
Great. And then I also know, once again, coming from a very privileged position, if you're trying to cross the Mediterranean or the Channel to get to, and you've put all your life savings into it, and it's a completely different story.
Right. So, as kind of last question, you emphasized on questions more than solutions or answers. If you could leave us with one question that we should ask ourselves about the future, what would it be? Just one question.
Just one question.
Us one.
Maybe go back to something I said a little bit earlier. In the futures I'm imagining, whose voice is not being heard?
Important. Difficult to think, but critical. Thank you. Martin, I tried not to stick to some specific questions and just going forward with the flow. Definitely, there are lots of things I want to ask you, and all the time I'm enjoying of talking to you. But the point is, we already decided to focus on half an hour to 40-45 minutes for each.
I think that's good for a podcast, I think.
Yes. But still, I have one last not least question, which is maybe you want to share something that I forgot to ask, or you want to stress more on something. at the end of this episode, or any kind of takeaway. It depends on you. Feel free to share with us.
Hmm. I don't know. Maybe just something, because I think the questions you asked and where this discussion went, and like you said, it was not planned. It's a very spontaneous thing. I kind of feel called to maybe stress a little bit more the whole bit about vulnerability, and 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 uh, and maybe it's important for us um, to recognize and accept our common vulnerability. Uh, and it might sound counterintuitive, in a time of crisis, you need to be strong and you need to do things and you need to fix things and fight. And maybe in a time of crisis, what we really need is to realize that we're vulnerable and that vulnerability requires community, vulnerability requires care for ourselves, but for the other in general. And
Uh, Accepting vulnerability is kind of capability for us as human beings,
yeah, yeah,
right?
maybe. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, I like that. I,
Oh, thank you. Thank you for this insightful and inspiring conversation. I mean, I enjoyed a lot from rethinking what value means to exploring leadership and, change. You are showing us that futures literacy isn't just about a concept that we are talking about or a buzzword. It's a powerful mindset that help us act with more purpose and impact in a way. To our listener, take a moment to reflect on the questions Martin shared, including that specific question about those voices we haven't heard so far, and think about how you can bring futures thinking into your daily work, life, or specifically community. We are sharing your LinkedIn in the description of this episode. If people wants to learn more about you, they can follow you there, I think, and approach you. Also, oh, thank you. Also, we are sharing these episodes, same as the previous ones, on different platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, and other platforms. And feel free to leave a review or subscribe at Pin Community Podcasts. Until the next time, keep imagining, trying to hear those voices Martin mentioned, and exploring and shaping what's next that we have no idea. And we have no idea what future holds for us. Last word you can share, Martin, and then we can say bye.
no, just thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I enjoyed a lot.